So I'm Gary Friedman. Here we are sitting in California, which is where it's the Center for Mediation and Law, and also mediation law offices. And this is the place where I came in 1979, this office actually, but started in 1976, to really try to make a pretty profound change in what my work had been up to that point. So I had grown up in a family of lawyers on the East Coast and gone to all the usual schools, Brown University undergraduate and Boston University Law School, and then went to practice law as a litigator for 5 years in Connecticut. During that time I really had a sense that there was something missing in terms of my life. I really thought the problem was me, that I just didn't fit. Even though I found litigation very exciting and I think I was pretty good at it, it felt like somehow it wasn't serving the people that I really wanted to be serving. My clients often seemed to be feel more alienated even when they won. And I had this feeling of distance and an aggressiveness and qualities in me that got exacerbated. So I found my work as a trial lawyer brought me to a point where I felt like this wasn't right for me to continue to do. So I stopped. Moved to California, and I was sure that I'd put the law behind me. Very disappointing to my father, and liberating to me in one way to know that, in fact, maybe I did have, there was something beyond my work as a lawyer that I could do. And so I went through a period of soul searching, and during that period realized how important the internal reality was, that to really understand what was happening inside me, which was something that I hadn't paid much attention to, was really quite critical to trying to create a life for myself that was personally and professionally satisfying. And a lot of the dichotomies that I experienced as a lawyer didn't make sense to me. And in that internal search, I kind of found this point where I realized, well, you know, as liberated as I felt from the practice of law, that the law and my connection to it were very profound and deep inside me, and that I couldn't turn my back on that any more than I could turn my back on wanting to be liberated from what I felt were a lot of constrictions that didn't make sense to me. So it was shortly after that I met Jack Himmelstein. We were in a training program together in psychology, and he had the similar impulse, and we teamed up together, and first we worked through this project for the study and application of humanistic education and law at Columbia, and we brought law professors from all over the country, and we asked the question, is there any difference that we can make in terms of who lawyers are and how law is taught? Would that make a difference in terms of the way people experience law? And that was the question, and we got some pretty good answers to that in terms of what could happen in the legal classroom. But that was NIMH. A couple of years into that said, well, what difference is this going to make in terms of how law is actually practiced? And our answer was, we didn't know. So there was some implication that we ought to find out. And so that's when I hung out a shingle. It was a kind of experiment right down the road from where this office is, with this idea, really two ideas. One was I wasn't ever going to do anything again that didn't seem right to me, even if it felt kind of professionally mandated. And the second was I was willing to question any assumption and all assumptions I had about how to be a lawyer. So when about 6 months into that, a couple of people came, friends of mine, and they said they were going through a divorce and could I help them? I said, yes, I think I could. I could be, represent one of them, the other would represent themselves. And so the woman turned to me and she said, you sound like all the rest of them. I thought you were different. And why can't you just, work with both of us and not have to be on one side or the other and try to help us find our way through this? So I said, well, that's a pretty profound question, and I don't have a good answer to that, but let me think about it. And so they came back, and I said, I think you're right. I think there is another way to do this. And I actually don't know how to do it, but I'm willing to try. And you've also picked an area, divorce, which I'd had almost no experience in my litigation career. But if you're willing, let's see if we can figure out a way to help me get you through this. So that was 76, and we went through a lot of kind of false starts and blind alleys, but managed to kind of bumble our way through to something. And at the end of that, I felt like, well, this really feels like a way that I want to be working with people. And so that was the beginning of my mediation. That was the first mediation that I did. And after that, actually, the word got around very fast. I didn't use the word mediation for some time, but it was all in a spirit of trying to find a different way to be a lawyer that actually fit more with who I experienced myself to be and how I could make my personal values congruent with my professional work. And that tension, which was there then, remains to this day. And of course, it's all changed over time. In terms of the different challenges we had at the beginning. The first challenge was, well, when the people in the Bar Association found out what I was doing, they didn't much like it, and there were some questions asked, and there was an investigation, I think, that actually began. I welcomed that because my feeling was what I was doing made so much sense to me that if there were rules that prevented it, which is what they were saying, then they ought to change the rules. So it was in that spirit that I welcomed the investigation. And a couple of years later, they came back around and said, would you come talk to us about what you're doing? So what happened over time, of course, was at the beginning it was all brave people coming in. People that were kind of against the legal system and against lawyers, and I'm one of those good guys. My feeling was, well, we need to really empower people. Let's keep lawyers out of the room. Let's keep law out of the room. And in fact, what I found was that was creating a whole other problem, which was I was part of the problem. It was still adversarial. Now I was just on the other side, trying to make the adversary system and adversary lawyering the bad guy. So I was still caught in a right-wrong system. So over time, the question became was there a way to kind of bring together the best of what I knew really there were wonderful things about, that I had skills that I had as a lawyer. And there were some very important things about the adversary system that needed to be taken into account. So was there a way to be able to live in some certain kind of tension between trying to find what works for people to really put people in charge of the process, but at the same time not give in to having people feel disempowered by law or lawyers. And so over time we learned to kind of live with certain tensions, and one of the tensions was whether or not law could be included as a reference point, as no more or less important than the parties wanted it to be, but that they could still do that in the context of making their own decisions based on what they thought was right.